So my name is Myrna Munchik. I'm a teaching associate professor in Engineering Design and Society Division, and we are hosting Dr. Melissa Bilec. Is that how you pronounce it? Melissa Bilec is an associate professor in the Swanson School of Engineering's Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, where she also earned her BS, MS, and PhD degrees. She serves the Deputy Director of the Mascaro Center for Sustainable Innovation and holds the Roberta A. Luxbacher Faculty Fellow. Dr. Bilec's professional interest focuses on sustainable communities, the built environment, life cycle assessment, sustainable health care, and indoor air impacts. She is interested in improving system-level environmental performance of buildings while developing a deeper understanding of indoor environmental quality, occupant impacts, and energy use. She is working with local businesses and communities to promote ambient and indoor air quality awareness through air quality monitoring, civic engagement, and citizen science. She is the PI of a multidisciplinary and multi-institutional research project, NSF EFRI Barriers, Understanding, Integration, Life Cycle Development, or so-called BILD. Dr. Bilec has over 60 journal publications, 45 conference proceedings, and has secured $6.3 million in funding, including 10 National Science Foundation grants. She has received 4 Education Excellence Awards, and she developed a new MS in Sustainable Engineering degree and a university-wide undergraduate certificate in sustainability. Dr. Bilec's work prior to academia included tenure at the Urban Redevelopment Authority of Pittsburgh, where she worked on green infrastructure projects, including the conversion of a 100-year bridge into a pedestrian bridge. Dr. Bilec serves on the Green Building Alliance Board. Dr. Bilec is compelled by the intersection of the societal impacts of engineering and what they tell us about how we should teach students, especially relative to design. Today, she will talk to us about how the multidisciplinary spirit of the Renaissance teaches us lessons about design and engineering, and will discuss how student educational opportunities can foster interdisciplinary inquiry and creativity. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Melissa Bilec.
Thank you so much. So I really appreciate you being here. I know it's tough on a Friday. And this is the first time I'm giving this talk, so I'm a little nervous too, so bear with me. I did practice it twice, so I think I'm within the time period. And if you were at my earlier talk, I apologize, but I think there's two people at the earlier talk. So I'm going to go through why I love this and why this is one of my inspirations. So this is the Duomo in Florence, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm really interested in studying these prolific times in history because I think we can learn a lot from them. And during the Renaissance time, when the Duomo was being built, the one thing that I really am inspired by is nobody knew how to actually make the dome. And the folks at the time really said, you know, I have faith in humanity, someone's going to figure it out, and they proceeded. And I think that is a really important lesson for us to take from that time period. And so the person who did it was Brunelleschi. And the other reason why I'm really inspired by this, and this goes back to this master architect idea, is that not only was he the designer, but he was finding the materials, finding how to get the materials to the site. He was managing the labor. He was designing the mechanics and the equipment to actually hoist all of the materials on up into the dome. And if you ever get a chance to visit Florence, a lot of the equipment that he uses is actually in the museum right behind the Duomo, and I really encourage you to go see it because it's fascinating. I probably could have spent my whole time there. So I'm personally really inspired by this, and this is something that I hold kind of near and dear to my heart. And so when I was learning about mines and so first of all, a lot of acronyms, okay? And there's a lot of moving parts. But when I was trying, I really tried my best to learn as much as I could about, when I was reading about the Bachelor of Science in Engineering, or BSE 2.0, I was really struck by this idea that it's a program that is a Renaissance and human-centric degree. And that just spoke to me more than anything. That, and I don't know if any of you were involved in kind of crafting that language, so if you were, thank you. I think it's phenomenal language. And that is one of the reasons why I'm here today, is because I think it's something that's so interesting and so passionate. And the other point is that most people forget this, but Leonardo da Vinci was actually an engineer. And he went to Milan. He left Florence. He's like, I'm done with Florence. I'm going to Milan to be an engineer. And he worked as an army engineer, and he also developed different battlements and different waterways as well. So it's been really inspiring. The other thing that I was really struck with when I was learning about mines is my other passion, and that's related to sustainability. And so when I was looking through the vision and mission for ESD, the commitment to sustainability and social responsible engineering and justice really came through. And you don't see that everywhere. And I think that is something that's really special about mines. The other thing that I thought was also really important and a special component to mines was just you could see the commitment and the passion of the students. And so I was trying to learn about the humanitarian engineering degree, and I was really struck by some of the things that the students said. So for example, Elizabeth said she's very passionate about helping women through engineering. And I was thinking, wow, she's doing that at her age. Imagine what she's going to be doing in 20 years if she's already thinking about that. And so one of the things I think about in terms of engineering and the engineering experience is this opportunity that we have. So we have this opportunity to create this space where students can be creative and learn, and also a safe space where they can have this college experience. I mean, this is a really important time and a formative time in so many people's lives as they grow up to be adults, and where we can challenge them to think about what we want to do in terms of quality of life and facing the challenges, but most importantly, to really enjoy their time and for it to be a memorable experience. And I think, I had some conversations, really great conversations today, and the one thing that I was really struck with is that commitment to the student experience at Mines, and I think that is something that's really important. And so Kevin asked me to do a couple things today in preparation for the talk. He wanted me to talk about my background, and I actually talked to Amy. I'm like, it's kind of uncomfortable talking about your background, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then he wanted me to talk about my 3 areas, obviously, that are related to EDS. So design, education, I'll talk a little bit about integrative engineering, and then I'll end with humanitarian engineering. And hopefully along the way, you'll get some lessons learned as well, some things that I've learned. So as Mirna said, I'm a triple alum from Pitt, which, I didn't even know that was a thing, to be honest with you, until my marketing person wrote something up and said that. But my time at Pitt as an undergraduate was really great. This is our E-Week, and these are some of my girlfriends I'm still friends with. Actually, the one lives in Colorado. She works for the Department of Interiors, and she's doing a lot of the concrete testing. And I laugh at that because we were the TAs in the concrete lab, and I'm like, we broke all the equipment. So it always makes me laugh. I'm like, you're doing all that now, and she's really had a successful career. After my time at Pitt, I'm going to try to keep this as brief as possible. I did a little bit of bridge engineering, and I worked for Turner Construction we were building a hospital. But my passion was really in thinking about what I could do for the community that I lived in. And part of that I was able to do by working at the Urban Redevelopment Authority of Pittsburgh. I knew I didn't want to work for a profit company. I knew that wasn't something that I wanted to do. And I knew I was committed to helping the community in the best way that I could. And it was a great fit for me. I got to work on these awesome projects. So this is The picture on the left is a brownfield. It's actually a U.S. Steel plant. It's called the J&L plant, but it was a U.S. Steel plant. And my family worked at U.S. Steel. My brother actually is working at U.S. Steel. It's in, where is he at? In San Francisco right now. But what I got to do during my time at the urban redevelopment was to take these legacy sites, these brownfield sites, and transform them into live, work, and play communities. And so I was able to, really work on the master planning, the funding side of it, managing these construction projects and design projects, and it's something that I'm really proud of. But probably the thing that I'm most proud of, and I have this in my bio, is that I got to work on the hot metal bridge, which was, this is the picture of the hot metal bridge here. They actually put molten steel and transported it across the river, which blows my mind, and it's so interesting. And so what I got to do was to take this bridge and transform it into a pedestrian and bicycle bridge. And it's a key connection of a part of a greater trail system. It's called the Great Allegheny Passage. So you can get on your bike in Pittsburgh and then bike all the way to DC, which is super, super cool. But this was a critical connection into the city of Pittsburgh, and it's a historic bridge. So I worked on that my whole time. I was on the construction site a lot without my hard hat in this picture, so don't show anyone. And then this was during the grand opening, which my mom went to, and it was a really great experience. And I was sitting there, going through the pedestrian live loads, wondering if it was okay with all these people on it. But most importantly, is it's something that I can share with my family. Something that we can do together. We can bike ride together, and it's really neat to know all the little decisions. And where we're standing right now is called a little belvedere, and I fought so hard to keep those belvederes in. They're just little outcrops, and so many people go there and will get their pictures taken for their weddings and different things. And it's something that I'm really, really proud of. And so while I was finishing up my PhD, or while I was finishing up my time at the Urban Redevelopment Authority, the last couple years I actually worked on my PhD, which is kind of unusual, but it's something that was important to me. I wanted to finish up this hot metal bridge project, and it also allowed me access to all this data that I needed for my PhD. So it was really a win-win situation, and I was able to manage my time. And I put this up, it's during my dissertation, and I think our dissertation defense. And I actually think it's a really important thing to do, because it should be a celebration. I was really glad. You worked so hard to get to that point, and I was really glad to be there. And also my laptop was so big. I was just looking at that picture. I was like, holy cow, look at that laptop. Wonder why my shoulder hurts. And right after I finished up my PhD, I thought I was going to work at the URA. I thought I was going to work on these great projects, and my department chair, still my department chair, asked me to stay on. And he asked me to be a co-director of the Center for Sustainable Transportation Infrastructure. And the point of that was a research relationship with Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, and it was, we did about $5 million in external research, and I was supporting that relationship and furthering develop the center. So I decided to go on, and it does feel like Bilbo Baggins sometimes, that there and back again. One day you're on this side of the table, and the next day you're on the other side of the table. But the long and the short of it is that it did work out. I was also the director of the construction management program and the assistant director of the Mascaro Center. And I was in a non-tenure stream position. But then I started to bring in more external funding and to be more successful. And with the help of other colleagues, including Amy, I moved into a tenure stream position. And I've been able to develop a really strong research program with great graduate students. And so this is our little research group. It's BC Built Environment and Sustainable Engineering. And we do work primarily in buildings and communities. I also do work in sustainable healthcare and indoor air quality, but it's been a really great experience. And I thought I should put this up here. It's a through the numbers sort of thing, so I won't belabor it because we did talk about that. But I'll just mention a couple of things that I'm particularly really proud of. I just launched the MS degree in sustainable engineering, which started in the fall, which honestly after, we launched it and I had one of those like, oh my gosh, is this really going to happen? Like, so that was a really kind of interesting experience to go through. The undergraduate certificate in sustainability is a university-wide certificate. I developed it with my colleague, Dr. Emily Elliott, and there's already, I think, 75 students that are a part of it in less than a year. So it was definitely something that people really, really wanted. I'm really committed to diversity efforts. And so I serve on the Engineering Diversity Committee. I'm also a part of the AGEP program, which AGEP is a program from NSF, and so I'm a part of their internal advisory board. And I recently became the faculty member of SWE, and so that's been really, really fun. And so part of my leadership that I've been working on is I'm now the Deputy Director of the Mascaro Center for Sustainable Innovation. And this is a picture of our building. I love the building. It's a great space. And this is also another picture of our building. My office is like right down in the corner and this shows a beautiful sunny day. And some of the things that we do in the Mascaro Center, actually Sam's familiar with one of them. We run a summer undergraduate research program. So this is some of the students. So we've been doing that for 14 years, and we average between 15 and 20 students. We do a lot of outreach with local schools. So this is the Manchester Academic Charter School that we've been working with for many years. And they're a wonderful organization to work with. Actually, those are my students, Harold and Václav. And we do an annual or biannual conference called the Engineering Sustainability Conference. And that's been growing, and we have a really nice following. And we do different service activities. So this is the undergraduate students working in the urban farm in Pittsburgh. It's actually in Garfield. And thanks to Sam, we do a Teach the Teacher program. And so this is, I think we've run it for 3 years now. And so these are it's about 20 middle school students that come to the university, and we teach them about sustainability, and then they have different toolkits to then go back into their schools and then implement sustainability. And David Sanchez is doing a really great job with that program. And the other thing that I get to do is we have about $200,000 for research funding to support research projects. So I get to manage the research portfolio. And so one of the things I do is identify regional needs, national needs, and look at projected federal funding to align our research program with those needs, and to try to form cohorts around that as well. And of course, I couldn't do this without exceptional students and graduate students. And so these are all graduate students and some of the undergraduate students that I work with. I work with 43 undergraduate researchers, and I very much enjoy working with undergraduate researchers. Okay, so design education. So when I was first talking with Kevin, I was like, who doesn't love design? Like, that was literally my first reaction. Like, who doesn't love design? And there's so many interesting things about it, but that was like my visceral reaction to talking about this. And then I started to think about, well, what do I really want to talk about? And there were 3 things that I wanted to talk about in the design world. The first one was, I've been thinking about this since about 2004 when I started my PhD, and that doesn't count like the industry experience that I had. And my first foray into design thought was when I worked with this children's hospital. And what we were trying to understand at the time was this children's hospital was going to be a green children's hospital. And we were trying to understand how that came about. Like, what was the process and the decision makers to implement all these green design features? Because at the time it was really novel. And one of the things that we discovered, the architect was Astorino, was that they used something called ZMET, which stands for Zaltman Metaphorical Elicitation Technique. And it's actually a marketing technique that they use with different stakeholders and focus groups to identify themes that needed to be in the design. And so, for example, one of the themes is transformation, and I talked about this at 12 o'clock. It's the idea of when you come into a hospital, you're looking for change. And so, and you want to go through this transformation, right? Especially if you have a sick child, the whole family wants to go through a transformation. And so, as you're walking from the parking garage to the registration desk, you'll see elements of transformation along the way, and also at different levels. So, for example, in the floor, it'll change from the seasons. And most of the adults don't see it, but the kids will see it because they're looking down. So they'll see a snowflake, they'll see a sunshine or seashells or something like that. So all of these subtle elements are really there to support the healing. And I've been really inspired by that whole concept of CMET, and I actually don't think it's used enough in, at least in design. So this was the Children's Hospital. The other thing that we did was we worked with the Children's Hospital to understand the impact of the green design on at the whole hospital level. And without going into a bunch of details, the most important finding is that we collected data from 2004 to 2012. And so this was before the move, so the old Children's Hospital, not green. And then this was post-move Children's Hospital green. And what we found is that the severity of the cases entering into the hospital, they were actually more severe cases, but the outcomes were better. And so that's really profound. So the mortality rate actually decreased. And so to couple up that research, we did a lot of focus groups and survey works to understand what was this. And the theme that came through was really that the building allowed us to function better and to promote the healing. So there's a healing garden, there's other green elements as well. So it was a really interesting and important study. And then we took this work and did it in a smaller setting on an oncology unit as well. And so so that's kind of my research stuff on design. From an educational perspective, and I'm not sure if you guys are doing this at Mines, I wanted to ask Amy. We've done something called the Chair Lab. Has anyone heard of the Chair Lab? You've heard of the Chair Lab, yeah. And this is done in collaboration with Claire and Taya at Clemson University and Amy Landis as well. And so there's a lot of concepts in the Chair Lab. One of the most important concepts that I think is really interesting is thinking about design evolution and the user. So the point of the Chair Lab is that the students are presented with 4 different types of chairs from different time eras. So I call that the Don Draper 1950s chair. And then you have like the early 90s, late 90s, and then the green chair. And then what happens is that the green chair is actually called the Think chair and has like kind of a certification for its level of greenness. And part of the reason why it's considered a green chair is because it's easily, you can easily disassemble it. And so what we have the students do then is disassemble the chairs, and we time them. And every time the Don Draper chair wins, it's the fastest. Everyone disassembles the Don Draper chair the fastest, and the green chair, the one that's designed for disassembly, actually takes the longest every time. Like, it's so interesting, right? So the students learn then about design for disassembly, and then they also learn about material selection. So one of the reasons why the 1950s chairs is so easy to disassemble is there's few materials, and many of the materials in it are recyclable. But then from a design perspective, I don't really want to be sitting in the 1950s chairs, right? Like, it doesn't really look that, it's actually really not that comfortable. So then we think about how can you take concepts of the 1950s chairs and then implement that into truly a green chair. And it has them think about green claims, and so that's why I put down it's the myth busting, and we were able to write a paper about this as well. Claire did a really nice job on it. And it's a really memorable experience, and it's highly engaging. And I love the competition. The students have to reassemble the chairs too, which makes for an interesting story. So my last thought on design is that, and I could probably talk about this for a lot longer, is, and this is a quote, it says, "Creativity is allowing yourself to make mistakes. Design is knowing which ones to keep." And the reason why I think this is an important quote is because one of the things that I think we could do better at engineering education is allow students the time and the space to make those mistakes. And we don't do that. I mean, at least at Pitt, I know we don't do that. And it's not to be disparaging, but it's really true. We don't allow the time and the space for the creativity and for the innovation to really occur. And I think that that's a really important thought. So next I'm going to talk about some of my integrative engineering education work, but I'm really trying to spend more time on the humanitarian engineering work that I'm doing. And this project also was funded, same with the Chair Lab, by a project that we're looking at integrating sustainability grand challenges and systems thinking into the engineering curriculum. And so really what we were trying to figure out was, what is the best way to integrate sustainability into the engineering curriculum? Because it wasn't clear. And while we're talking about sustainability, you could think of this, it could be ethics, it could be professional development, it could be a host of different topics if you really think about it. And what we observed is there were basically three main approaches, and I'll talk about two of them. The first one is the standalone approach. So like a course that I teach engineering and sustainable development. It's a standalone sustainability course. Or there are these module-based courses that you'll see. And what we have found is those module-based courses are then incorporated into senior design courses. And then sustainability is being integrated into senior design. So we call it senior design. I think you guys call it the capstone experience. And one of the things that's happening, at least where I'm at, is so many things like sustainability, ethics, professional development are being pushed into senior design. And the senior design or capstone design are getting too full, and so the experience is really being diluted, right? And so that is what we were really trying to understand, how should this best be integrated? And so what we did is we gathered up a whole bunch of senior design projects or capstone design projects. We gathered up a whole bunch of our course projects. And we were looking for student outcomes. We were trying to understand. And so we got a pretty good number. We've sat through a lot of capstone design presentations over the course of a couple years, which I typically do anyway, but it's different when you're looking at it from a research lens of trying to answer a question. And so these are courses at Arizona State University and at University of Pittsburgh. And then what we did after we got all of the projects is we started to look at them through different rubrics, and I'm using rubrics kind of loosely, to evaluate the question that we were trying to answer. So I'll talk about two today. We looked at all six in the paper that my student Kevin did, but to give you a little bit of a flavor for what we found. The first one is Bloom's, and the last one is sustainability topics. So, as hopefully everyone's familiar with Bloom's, but you see the knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, so on, at the bottom part of the x-axis. And then what we also tried to do was to understand, according to the American Society of Civil Engineers, Bach 2, what they require or they recommend for sustainability as well. And so you can see what in the bachelor's degree, it's recall, translate, and compute, and then pre-licensure, it's correlate, and then the rest is really what we put as no requirement. And so the courses in blue are the course projects, and the courses in gray are the senior design projects. And as you can see, this is good for the senior design projects and the course projects. They were about the same. For recall, which we would hope in the senior design that it would be the same. For translate, you start to see a differentiation where for comprehension, you start to see the course projects for the standalone courses actually performing better, and also for application. And in the analysis phase, we really didn't see anything related to sustainability and senior design. It was more of a, here's our sustainability element. It was really more of an add-on. And so we would say that in the standalone projects, they really exhibited higher levels of cognition. So one of the things that we would potentially advocate for would be to really consider doing the standalone courses in the curriculum, if that's one of the things that you want to focus on, especially related to sustainability. The other thing we looked at is called the greater breadth of sustainability topics. And so again, the areas in blue are the course projects, and the areas in gray are the senior design projects. And so the areas in blue actually showed more thought in different areas. So for example, they would consider things like pollution prevention, but also corporate governance for sustainability, sustainable agriculture. But in the senior design projects, they were really focused, like a renewable energy project. I'm sorry if this is hard to see, or sustainable infrastructure. So we felt like this standalone projects really gave a broader breadth of sustainability and what they were trying to do. And we were really excited to see that. So the conclusions from this is that we felt like the standalone, in the sample size that we looked at, the standalone sustainable engineering course really did show an increased cognition, a linkage of pillars, which I didn't talk about, and a breadth of sustainability topics. And two of the potential reasons for the differences in senior design and standalone is this idea if it's a packed or full senior design course. And this was a really important thing for me to point out, because I feel like that capstone design and senior design is so important that if you keep packing it full of all these different things, then it's losing something. And so I wanted this project to elucidate that, and I feel like we did. And the other thing that really drove that, obviously, was the expectation of the senior design instructors and the clients, and also the project rubrics of which the students are graded on. And so and we talked a little bit about this at lunch, if the clients don't care about sustainability, the students are reluctant to push back on that. And so that's really a whole other conversation that we probably could have. So lastly, I'm going to talk about humanitarian engineering. And I wanted to talk about the path that I took to get here. And what I first started doing in this area is to train students to do home energy assessments, and what we focused on originally was low-income communities. And I wanted to talk about the educational program that we developed with Penn State. So in collaboration with David Riley at Penn State University and through a program called the National Energy Leadership Corps, we did through a course, we trained students to do residential energy assessments. And along the way, we taught them how to personally engage with the homeowners, which we thought was really important for actually implementation of energy efficiency measures. We did this in a flipped classroom setting, so we were interested in saying, like, is this flipped classroom a really good idea or a bad idea? They learned leadership and communication skills, so we actually trained them on leadership, which we don't do a lot of that. And we had them think about the homeowner's perceptions. So, and I didn't spend a lot of time on the course stuff, but an activity, what they may do is we'll say, you need to understand how the HVAC system works in a home. We would do a video, like they would watch online, and then the activity would be for the students to go into a home and to be a detective and uncover what it looks like and the HVAC system in their home. And then they come back and report to the class. So that was kind of that was one way how the course was set up, to give you a snippet. And then they do 3 residential energy assessments. One is in a larger group, and then 2 other are in your project team. And so how this assessment would work is that the students would enter the home, and I would say it was really interesting. Just walking into a home is such a personal experience, and a lot of my students were international students as well. So having an international student go into a home that they've maybe only been in their apartment, and it was a really interesting, super interesting thing. We had 20 questions that they would go through, as was a survey, an informal survey. And what we wanted them to do at the time was to identify the homeowner's worldview. And so I don't like to stereotype people. This was actually developed by the Kinsey group. But what we wanted them to do was to identify the person's potential worldview, so when they gave recommendations, the recommendations would potentially align with action. So like I would probably be, I am a concerned mom and a true believer, And so one of the things that we tell the students to do is to look on people's refrigerators, because you can really see what people care about, what they put on refrigerators. So for example, there might be like a WWF thing on someone's refrigerator. They might then be a true believer. Okay, and so that's just one way that we talk about how you can engage and learn more. The other thing that they did is they would do a walkthrough. And so we had an inspection form developed on the iPad, and they would go through the inspection similar to how you would do other things. And they had this little toolkit that they used, which actually gave them confidence when they went into the house. It was like their little doctor's bag, it gave them a lot of confidence. And one of the things that we did is they learned how to use an IR camera. So the IR camera was used to identify not only issues in the home, but was used as a communication methods to the homeowners. Because these pictures can be pretty compelling. They can be more compelling than actually a written report. And this is an example of the report that you would get. And we would give them 5 recommendations, 5 energy recommendations. And so we did this in 120 homes in Greater Pittsburgh. And I'll go back to this. And we specifically focused on the East End community in Pittsburgh because it's a lower income community. And we really wanted to focus in that community to help the community. And so it used to be a thriving community, so you could see in the upper right sides. And then, unfortunately, because of controversial urban planning methods, this section has really experienced a lot of lower. The housing values are much lower, is one of the main things, and the conditions of the homes are problematic as well. Okay, so we did all these 120 home energy assessments, and then I'm like, well, what did we really do? We've done this, what did we really do? Did the students learn anything? What did the flipped classroom work? I don't know if it worked. I really don't know. So what we did was we looked at perceived learning in the flipped classroom by looking at 3 different evaluative methods. One was a pre and post confidence questionnaire. We used final course reflection journaling that one of my undergraduate students coded, and we used the college and university classroom environment inventory. And so what we found is that in this particular classroom, we did see an increased confidence in their learning, which is a perception of learning. We also saw the skills that we wanted to see, we saw that was reflected in the survey, so communication and leadership. And we had high marks in personalization and involvement for the CUCI survey. And so in this particular case, I felt like the flipped classroom was pretty effective. I wouldn't say that for all the classrooms. I really think you have to be strategic about how you use the flipped classroom. And the service-based course, it might be a good approach. And then I was thinking, but what did we really do? Did anyone do anything? We did all these reports. Did anyone really do anything? And so what we did then was we did another survey, and we looked at the implementation of how many people implemented what we said. And so what we found is that, from memory, I think about 40% of the people implemented the recommendations, which was actually in line with other residential energy assessment programs, which are about 30 to 80% adoption rate. But more importantly, what we found is that these 30 to 85% adoption rates are really vague. So like, for example, is one light bulb one efficiency measure? Is 10 light bulbs? Like, it was really unclear, and we are spending a lot of money and time on residential energy assessments, and we need to have a better platform of understanding what is really working. So that was one of the things that came out. So what counts? The other thing that we found is that there's a catalytic impact of us going into people's homes. So just showing up and them inviting us into their homes, regardless of what we said, made them do other things as well. And that isn't really accounted for in all the different studies that have looked at the effectiveness of energy efficiency measures in homes. So additional 101 energy improvements were implemented since receiving their assessments. Okay, so then I was like, we need to spread the word. So we did these workshops, and a lot of people came out to learn more about energy efficiency. And I said, I'm not going into these communities and doing this without actually doing the retrofits. Like, I'm done giving reports. We need to actually do things. And so I partnered with an organization called Rebuilding Together Pittsburgh, and it's a national organization. There's one in Pittsburgh. And once a month, we would go into a home, and we would do some of the recommendations. So that we could do, like some of the sealing, some of the different things that the students and I could do, and we did it on a volunteer basis. And then Rebuilding Together would partner with us on those days, and they would do the things that their contractors could do, like install a front door, install a new furnace, those sorts of things as well. And that was really important to me. I'm like, I don't want to go into a community and just give another report. Like, that wasn't why I was there. And then I started, some of the homes were just really difficult. We worked with one organization called the Kingsley Association, and the homes needed stabilized, more so than anything to do with energy efficiency. And then that in and of itself was that was a really important part of how I shifted my thoughts on what we needed to do. And so I really started thinking about, are we doing the right thing? And so I started to shift into environmental justice work. And so this East End community, it's 77% of the population is African American, and 32% of the residents live below the poverty line. And you can see the conditions of some of the homes. And the thing that I learned about is the air quality in the region is very poor. And so while we're worried about energy efficiency and the heat escaping from the homes, at the same time, the poor air quality is coming into the homes because the homes are in deteriorated states. And so that's when I was like, we really need to rethink what we're doing. And we really need to think about environmental justice work in the community. And I won't read through all these statistics in an effort for time, but Pittsburgh is ranked 6th for 24-hour particle pollution, and 1's the worst. 1 is not the best. And as many as half of the Pittsburgh public schools have asthma, far exceeding Pennsylvania's 11.3% asthma rate. So these are dismal numbers. And so while I like to think of Pittsburgh as this beautiful place, some of you may think of Pittsburgh like this, we still have an air quality problem. So this is Pittsburgh without an air quality problem day on the left. This is Pittsburgh with an air quality day on the right, and you can see the smog, and you can see these are black carbon GIS maps. So we currently have not only legacy issues, but we have current day issues too. And so what we've been doing is working in the community. And one of the things that I've learned is that gaining trust is a long process. And it really requires grassroots capacity and long-term commitment. And so with our friends in the community, we've developed something called the Environmental Justice Community Action Matrix. And under that program, under that heading, we've been running different programs. And so we is primarily me and my graduate student, Harold. And so we've been establishing technical partnerships. And I'll talk about each of these. We've been doing community action team meetings, and we've also done different workshops. And so one of the things that we do is train the folks about air quality issues and how to measure air quality and why it's important. And then the community action training is really important. So what we're doing with the community action training is that we're working with key members of the community, and we're training them to be leaders in different areas so then they can be advocates in their community. And so, for example, we did one on air quality, but we also did one on water. And there's a lady that is like the advocate. She works for Living Waters of Larimer. And that's like, she captures every little drop of her water. It's so inspirational. And then 2 years ago, we did an Urban Transition City Movement workshop. And so the folks that we trained in the community action training were then speakers in the workshop for the community. And so 68% of the UTCM attendees were from targeted environmental justice communities. And so it was the snowiest day in Pittsburgh. I called Harold, I'm like, should we cancel? No one's going to come. And people showed up. Like, it was an amazing thing. And so this is some pictures from the event. This is the lady from the Living Waters of Larimer in the upper left, and this the one over there is the gentleman behind the podium is Fred Brown. He's been a really big advocate in the community as well. So where we're at now, we're really trying to focus on this air quality and quality of life. And so what we're doing is called Citizen Science Mobile Air Quality Monitoring, where we're doing bike campaigns, and we're collecting data on the air quality, and then the residents and people that are involved in bike groups will come and ride with us throughout the community, and that just we have a presence in the community, which is a part of the trust building. We've set out an ambient air quality monitor that's collecting the air quality in the community. And now what we're doing is our home indoor air quality assessments. And so we're going into people's homes, and we're doing the physical measurements, but we're also doing quality of life surveys. So we're really interested in understanding the connection between quality of life and indoor air. And this is just an example of one of the results. And so we did formaldehyde. These are the formaldehyde testings that we did. And the one little girl in the home kept going to the hospital because she had asthma attacks, and they couldn't figure out why. And here, there was just so much plastics and new products in the space that could be potentially one of the reasons why it was exacerbating her asthma attacks. I'm not saying that it is, but we asked them to move that to a different location to try to help mitigate some of the asthma attacks that she's having. And so what I know at this point is that while many cities really work on environmental sustainability initiatives, without having long-term strategies that focus on grassroots engagement and bottom-up principles, I think that some of the strategies and the outcomes are going to fall flat, that you really need to have long-term commitment and grassroots engagements. And the one thing that we've really focused on is this win-win situation. So for example, we'll do the energy assessments, but we're only doing it if we can really help and do a retrofit to really try to improve the community. And the one thing that's been really interesting is that the knowledge gained through these citizen science initiatives what we have observed is these intergenerational impacts that we hope will build resilience and support the environmental needs of the present and the future. And so I want to especially thank Cassie, who did a lot of the Children's Hospital work, Harold, who is my graduate student, and I told him, no pressure, but I hope you're president one day. He's an amazing person, and I'm really fortunate to work with him. And then my student Kevin, who did a lot of the energy residential, the home energy work, and he's working in Boston now, doing really great things. And so I'll leave us kind of where we started, and to say that I think, one of the things that I think about is that we really do have an opportunity to think about what we want the engineering experience to be like, and to really foster that sense of creativity and inspiration that we saw in the Renaissance. So thank you so much. Questions?
We do have questions.
Yes, sorry.
I have so many questions. Okay, I'll start with the last example. And what you showed was sort of carefully walking that line of balancing the community needs and the students' needs. The students' needs to learn and engage with the community, but the actual community needs, and uncovering what the community actually needs. Because of course everybody needs to be more energy efficient. And then, can you talk more about how to, because my guess is that you were doing energy assessments for how many years first? Maybe a couple semesters?
Probably 2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years. And everything looks great when you're doing that. And then you kind of go, oh, wait a minute, there's a bigger problem. Do you have any insights on accelerating that understanding of those community needs? Because like in my case, I'm focused on the student needs, and that it slows down that understanding process. Any insights about that? Or does it just take its time? That's fine.
Yeah, I can say that I think it does take time. I think it really does take time. It took time for me to process everything. And that's why I went through like what do we really do? Like that was really what I was trying to get at. Every step of the way, I was stopping to say like, am I having an impact? Does this matter? And sometimes I think we just go, and don't really reflect on what impact we're having.
Other than in the student's head.
Yeah, and to be fair, it isn't easy, and it's never elegant. Like when you're doing a flipped classroom for the first time, it's really hard, and I felt really inadequate most of the time during. I don't know if that's the right word, but I was a really uncomfortable feeling doing the flipped classroom the first time. But I think that pausing and reflecting and also, I'm specifically working in this community because the community right next to it is fully it's gentrified. And this particular community is holding off developers so that they can maintain their homes. So I'm committed to this. Like I've been committed to this for years. I mean, Google is literally 2 blocks away. Whole Foods is like 3 blocks away. Target is right there. I mean, it is like the community is saying stop, and they've done an excellent job at that. And I kept thinking anything that I could do to really help that, would help the community. But I think it's just a lot of time. The trust building. The one thing that I did that I didn't talk about. My student Harold, what I did one summer, and we talked a long time about this, is he went and worked at the Kingsley Association. I paid, but he worked at the Kingsley Association, and we would meet there, and he became a part of the community. And that was a big change, so he was also able to then gain trust. And it was really different for him to go into the community. I couldn't work there all summer, and this is what he wants to do. And so to watch his transformation has really been, a big gift for me. Okay, who's ready for cocktails?
Long day.
Yes. Well, again, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. You have a really special place here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.